Hello, my name is Luke Tran, and I'm going to be presenting Team 12's project on remote learning and its effect on the academic performance of students during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our project will be on how remote learning in the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the performance and grades of high school and college students. This infographic that was put together by one of our team members shows some general statistics on how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected students mentally and academically. The sources for these statistics are shown at the bottom of the infographic. Due to the nature of the pandemic, much of America's schools and universities have transitioned to or support an online learning format. Instead of the traditional methods of receiving lectures in person, classes have begun to support online lectures in place of physical ones, or have done away with scheduled lectures entirely. With the sudden shift in teaching methods, many Americans have debated whether the original method of teaching is superior to online methods or not. There are prevailing theories that the added stress of COVID and the teaching changes associated with it have significantly and negatively affected most students' grades. Our presentation today goes over the opinions of high school and college level students and how their grades have been affected during the pandemic. To evaluate how effective the different methods of teaching are and compare with other data on how COVID has affected student performance. Of the data that was collected, 14 of the people surveyed were currently receiving online classes only, none were receiving in-person only classes, and 5 were receiving both online and in-person classes. One person indicated other for the kind of format they were taking. The overall education levels of the respondents and the years they've spent within those levels were also recorded. Because no one indicated that they were still taking in-person classes, GPA currently and before the pandemic were recorded for those who were taking online courses and those who were taking both online and in-person courses. Both groups were also asked to rate how they felt about their classes from 1 to 10 and which format they preferred to take out of all of the ones mentioned above. 18 out of 20 students surveyed were in college, 1 was in high school, and 1 indicated other. Most had only 2 to 3 years in their institution. Those who took online classes mostly rated their class satisfaction from 2 to 6, while those who took both formats rated their classes anywhere from 6 to 10. Based on the data, in-person learning or mixed was much more popular of a choice than online learning, despite the overwhelming majority of online students. Additionally, according to the Journal of Medical Internet Research, 44% of students have admitted to dealing with depressive episodes due to COVID, based off 195 students questioned from an unspecified large university. From the New York Times, there have been a total of 535,000 COVID cases in U.S. colleges and universities from the beginning of the pandemic to the beginning of March 2021. These statistics were taken from the infographic shown back in slide 2. The mean GPA of those taking both online and in-person classes is 3.319, while the mean for the previous GPA is 3.284. For online courses only, the mean GPA is 3.411, while the previous GPA before the pandemic is 3.619. This shows that those who took mixed classes on average saw a slight improvement in their grades, while those taking only online courses saw a more substantial decrease in their grades on average. Based on the additional knowledge that of the 14 people in online classes, 10 preferred in-person learning, it is possible that the online format versus in-person is negatively affecting their grades. 3 of the 5 who took both formats preferred online. However, more analysis will be done below to see if our claims can be further supported. The median values of the previous GPA before the pandemic and the current GPA during pandemic for both class types are both 3.6. The median values for the online classes for before the pandemic and during the pandemic are 3.6 and 3.4 respectively. This shows that there was barely, if any, practical change in the performance of students taking online and in-person classes, while those taking only online courses saw a significant decline in the performances. The first and third quartiles are as follows. For the current GPA of students in both online and in-person formats, 2.615 for the first quartile and 3.883 for the third quartile. For those same people before the pandemic, 2.56 for the first quartile and 3.85 for the third quartile. For the GPAs of the students taking classes online only, 3.295 for the first quartile and 3.532 for the third quartile. And for their quartiles before the pandemic, 3.36 for the first quartile and 4 for the third quartile. We can see that most students are expected to pass their classes overall no matter what their method of class is, as no percentile reaches below 1.5. However, based on the upper and lower percentiles of each group, we can see that those who take online courses are expected to do better overall than those who take both. Yet some will perform worse now than in previous years, while those who take both may perform better than before. The range of the current GPA for those taking both styles of classes is 1.77, while that of the previous GPAs is 1.88. For those taking online courses, they are 0.98 currently and 0.83 before the pandemic. Based on the ranges, we can conclude that those who only take classes online all had and now have GPAs that are much closer together than those who took both forms of classes. It is possible that the reason why there is so much more range between the both groups compared to the online groups is because the amount of online versus in-person classes was not specified. While everyone in the online-only groups don't take any in-person classes, the differing amount of in-person classes may have affected the GPAs, making those sets of data more inconsistent. For the current GPA of those who take both types of classes, the standard deviation is 0.712 and 0.745 for the previous GPAs. For online students, it's 0.281 and 0.309 respectively. This further confirms that there is less of a difference between the online students' grades than the dual format ones. We can expect those who take both classes to currently have GPAs mostly from 2.85 to 3.97, and almost all to have GPAs from 2.57 to 4.0. Last year, we could have expected them to have GPAs from 3.0 to 4.0, and almost all to have GPAs from 2.69 to 4.0. We can expect most online students to have scored between 1.9 and 4.0, while almost all fell between 1.18 and 4.0. Last year, most would have scored between 1.79 and 4.0, with almost all getting from 1.05 to 4.0. According to the data, almost all students who took mixed classes will pass, while those who take online may run a risk of a failing GPA. The correlations tell us the following trends in popularity. Online and in-person class format, current versus previous correlation is a strong positive, while the online-only class format has a strong positive correlation. The correlation of the current grades of the students with both types of classes is somewhat weak. Although there is some noticeable correlation between both sets of points, each one has a large variance between how close they are to the next point. In contrast, the current and previous GPAs of the students taking online courses only have very strong correlations each. For both sets of data, the variance from point to point is relatively low. The similarity of the correlations of each previous GPA to the current one in each group indicates that each student performed better or worse by about the same factor in each group. The weak correlation between each group's data sets indicate that each student had a different experience with their GPAs. The strong correlation between the online class only data sets indicates that they all had similar experiences with their performances. The 95th percentile for the GPA of those taking both classes is 3.953, while the 99th percentile is 3.991. For previous GPAs, they are 3.940 and 3.988 respectively. For the people taking online courses only, the corresponding percentiles for the current GPA are 3.902 and 3.924. For the previous GPA percentiles, they are both 4. We can see that all values in this instance are comparable with no significant or practical difference between any of them. In conclusion, we can deduce that those who are taking online courses only have suffered significantly worse grades during the pandemic, while those who were able to take both formats of class saw some definite improvement in their grades. It was not by as much as the online classes students dropped in their grades. If we consider the outside information besides the GPAs, we can theorize that allowing students to mix their in-person classes with online classes may help them somewhat. Transitioning from all in-person to all online will almost certainly decrease their level of performance. It may also be that the stress of COVID in general may have worsened grades overall, and that online learning is not the only reason for their decline. However, based on student opinion, finding a way to reliably allow for in-person classes would have improved how well they performed in their classes this school year and help minimize the impact of COVID had on their GPA. Overall, it may be that in person classes are in fact superior to online classes.